Hello again, Crustacean Nation, and welcome back to Coach's Corner on the Athens Rock Lobster Network. At the time of recording, the team is coming off of splitting a 2-game set against the reigning Commissioner's Cup champions, the Binghamton Black Bears. The Rock Lobsters are going into the final 2 games of the regular season in a weekend on the road against the Columbus River Dragons. Matteen Rad, play-by-play voice of the team, joined as always by head coach Steve Martinson. Coach Marty, that series against Bingo felt like everything we thought it was going to be, a high-paced clash between the two of the league's best. It's the first time the two teams have faced off. Do you feel like you felt the difference between playing the Black Bears as opposed to other teams in this league?
Well, they're a good team, so other teams listen to these, so I'm going to watch what I say. But they're certainly, you can see why they're top in their division. Um, they're very deep. They're deep with defense. Their goaltending's really good, and they got all 3 lines can score, so they're definitely they're the team to beat in the North for sure.
In that first game, we just exploded for offense in the second period. Avery Smith with an absolute beauty of a goal, and then 2 from Kayson Gallant. It felt like that there were 3 goals in that second period that were generated by the team's speed, and that's keeping in mind how quick a team Binghamton is as well. It looked like the same exact identity that we've seen from the team all season long. Was that the plan, or were there tweaks that you had planned for to deal with the Black Bears' strengths?
Well, that division is weaker than ours, and I think their defense had a little trouble with our speed. I don't think they've seen that. Certainly from 3 lines they can skate like we can. So I'm sure they're on their heels a little bit, and I thought we played a physical game too. So as far as their team goes, you know, we made some good plays. I thought we outplayed them, and I thought that the score was, obviously they got back in it with the power play empty netters if they're, when they pulled the goalie, but um, it was a little bit frustrating at the end, and I think that gave them a little bit of momentum going in the second game.
And that leads me into my next question. As you mentioned, they scored all 3 of their goals in the third period, all on the power play, and 2 of them came with the net empty. Your group is known for never backing down, but how did you feel about the team's physical push and level of challenge as the game kind of wound down there?
Well, I liked our physicality during the whistle. I didn't like the stuff after. I mean, the calls that we had, and we were warned that they talk a lot and they don't want to back it up. It's typical. It's all talk and no dropping the gloves. So we got a couple of calls where we push guys. The one, the one on Zach I didn't like because the guy's ripped his stick out of his hands, and he gives him a little push, and that gives him the power play. And Murray's got to he got to pick his spots of that's another thing. It's a push after the play, and same thing with Carter. Carter's penalty was not during the play; it was afterwards, and sure enough, it's the bad penalties that sometimes hurt you more because, you're killing off a weak penalty and instead of, you go run somebody through the boards and it's like, okay, let's kill this off. It's a great hit. So we shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. And same thing with the goals against on the, in the first period, the next night, we just shot ourselves in the foot. We didn't defend well.
That would end up making Kayson Gallant's hat trick goal the game winner in that one. And Kayson is the first Rock Lobster to log multiple hat tricks and do it against one of the best teams in the league and one of the best goaltenders as well. You know so well what it takes to succeed at all the different levels of pro hockey. What do you think is the ceiling for Galley as he just seems to keep getting better and better?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly the top rookie in the league, and their defenseman Bones a pretty good. He's a pretty good rookie too, and we're getting a ton out of Gallant, and Kaysen, he works hard, he skates, he shoots on the rush, he's got a great one-timer, he's good around the net, he's not afraid to go to the front of the net. I mean, him and Milan are a couple of guys that, they're not our biggest guys, but they're always in the greasy areas, and that's why they lead the team in goals.
William Lavalliere was just so good in that game, and the scoreline didn't show just how much he stood on his head in that performance. Seeing how important he's become and the types of performances he's had, do you feel surprised at all that he didn't stick in Columbus or Monroe at all?
Well, I mean, it is just so competitive for goalies because of, there's only so many spots to go around. So and more and more NHL teams are signing, two goalies and pushing them down to the coast. So it's really hard for guys to get in. And then if you don't get in your first year or two, you kind of get looked over in that, okay, you might be good enough. You're just not getting the opportunity because there's just every year there's so many guys coming from junior or from college or Canadian college. So it's tough for goalies to crack in, especially if they don't do it right away.
Bingo came out and won the next night 4-1 in what was a much more rough and tumble game. Besides just all the penalties, what else do you think was different between night two and night one?
Well, I thought the biggest, we turned the puck over on the power play, entering the zone instead of getting it deep, and there's nobody backing up. That was a tough one to watch, and we didn't defend well on the first goal. We just stood there and watched and let the guys skate right around. It wasn't like they made really good plays to get goals. We just kind of, here's a scoring chance. So, and on the first one, they had a double screen. Our defenseman was screening it. They do things well. They had guys in front of the net. They go to the net well, but I thought really that the biggest, plus for them is the ridiculous 14 minutes of penalties that Milan gets in the first period. So you're taking your best player out, really for the entire first period. And that's where, that gives them momentum and, it breaks up, one of the top scoring lines in the league. And, we should have been on the power play from that. And how that, two defensemen grab him in front of the net, one's pushing him from behind, one's pushing him, grabbing him around the neck and rips his helmet off. And it's just a ridiculous call. And then the 10-minute, it's so frustrating. And it put me in a bad mood because I'm looking at it as what is possibly being called here. So, that was really frustrating. And I thought it certainly helped Binghamton, immensely.
I promise, Coach, I'm not trying to get you in trouble here, so feel free to give me the old no comment if you wish. But Dakota Bone was thrown out of that game for a high hit to the head that would ultimately be rescinded by the league and declared as an elbowing major instead. What was your reaction to the call in the moment, and what did you make of the league's decision to adjust it?
Yeah, I'm so done with it. I don't even, we get guys that throw a couple of punches and it's a game misconduct, and you get guys literally trying to injure players and headshots, and it's ridiculous. It's been ridiculous all year, and it's just frustrating, and there's just no rhyme or reason to it. But we've been you know we haven't had any shots where we've gotten guys suspended. We're probably the least suspended team in the league, and a couple of the ones that we've had, we shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been. You punch a guy that wants to fight, and you punch him once or twice on the way down. That's not, that's not aggressor. And I had the league tell me, and in the one with um, who was it?
With Greco?
Yeah, with Greco, that they threw 12 punches and he threw 6 punches. So right away, when the league says he threw 12 punches and the video shows 6, right away, it's like, okay, well, what are we really doing here? But I just told the league, if guys are going to run their mouth, they deserve to get punched. I mean, that's one of the reasons they have fighting in the game is so you can police that stuff. And I'm frustrated on it. And like I said, I'll probably move on to something else now, but it's ridiculous to some of the calls.
Well, you said that you would pay closer attention to scouting their team in these two games that you've played against them because there were potential championship implications later down the line. What did you learn about the Black Bears after these two games?
Well, I mean, they're a good team. They have guys that hit and they go to the net, and they don't have any weak spots. And I what I learned about them, I'm not going to say, to be honest with you, but I mean, they're a good team, and to beat them, you're going to have to play good hockey, and you're going to have to play a full 60 minutes.
Real quick, Coach, something out of the transactions page on federalhockey.com. We saw that there was new 4-game contracts for Joe Colatarsi and Orca Weisblatt. Those contracts won't last into the playoffs. Can you just take us through the nitty-gritty there of
Yeah, it's just it's a roster move to allow us to have more players on the roster. You're allowed to do that during the season. A lot of teams have been doing it, at the end, and it allows us to have a chance to play more guys on the weekend. So I'm going back and forth of what lineup I'm going to play, and it's really just a salary cap move and a roster move because we had the PTO still left over. So I figured we might as well use them, and that way we have a little bit extra money to spend too.
You return to the Columbus Civic Center this weekend, where the top spot in the Continental Division could come down to the final day. You would need to take both games against the River Dragons and also would need the already eliminated Monroe Moccasins to take a game off of Carolina. How do you approach a scenario like this, knowing what's on the line, but also knowing that some of it is out of your control?
Well, I mean, Monroe's got a skilled team, and they can beat anybody if they play a disciplined game and a hard-working game. But whether they do that or not, that's been their problem all year. They have players, and whether they play a good game or not, that remains to be seen. They got swept at home, I think, last weekend by Columbus. So I'm not counting on them to do anything. If they do it, great. The only thing we could do is win the next game and then the game after that. And right now you have to look at it as, it's out of our control. The likely chances you're playing Columbus. So it's 2 games against a team that most likely would play Wednesday. So it could be a really interesting weekend as far as that goes. And that's the way I'm looking at it.
At the end of the day, I know you well. I know you want to be able to be the best team and stamp your name atop the division. But do you see the benefit in staying in the 2 spot, knowing that you could potentially not have to worry about that gruesome of a travel schedule until the final if you make it there?
Well, the crazy play-in is kind of weird too, because a team has to play. It kind of really gives the team in the first round the number 1 seed advantage because they have to play a game, during the week and then travel and then play again. And so, I still would like to finish first if possible. But like I said, it's out of our hands. We gave away some games and now we're paying the fiddler. So, we'll see. But, we're going into this weekend to win Friday night and win Saturday night. And, we're still establishing who's playing with who and what the defensive pairs are and who's going to be playing the lineup. And, it's really competitive. And so there's a lot of things for us that we're doing this weekend that are in our control and what we want to do.
Is it hard not to look too far into the future, knowing that you have 2 crucial games coming up that could mean the top of the division, but also that these are 2 games against a team where you're very likely to play them next week in the first round of the playoffs?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's like I said, you want to establish things in these 2 games, and you want to establish your game, and you want to establish how you want to play, and you don't want to give them any momentum. You don't want to give them any light at the end of the tunnel. So we're going in there to play hard and play a game that gives us the best chance to win, and that's being physical, but not physical within the whistles. The stuff after the whistles, I'm tired of watching it, and I don't want our guys engaging in it because if a guy wants to fight, all they have to do is drop their gloves, and that all the talking and kind of scrumming, it's not for us. We don't really like that style, and you know the problem is like in Binghamton, you got 5 guys come in, and your defensemen are out at the point. You don't want them to come in because everything's critical, and like I said, then you end up with the other team. You end up being disciplined, and the other team ends up getting a power play after initiating everything. It's hard to understand the thought process that what goes through some of these guys' minds, but like I said, we can only control what we can control, and then let's come out and play a skilled, fast, heavy game this weekend.
Coach, I think even against other sports, you hear about hockey. Oh, playoff hockey is a different breed. There's something different about playoff hockey. And I think fans know it when they see it, but maybe have a tough time putting their finger on exactly what's different. In your mind, what's the biggest difference between regular season hockey and playoff hockey?
Well, the big difference is everything's on the line. So, you're looking at, you got to win 2 games. And so you can't lose more than 1 game in a round until you get to the final. So everything is magnified. So, you need the players to step up and play their A game. And we've been trying to push for that, the last few weeks and ramp things up, knowing that, you don't want to just lace up your skates on the first day of the playoffs and expect that you're going to be there. So we've been pushing to play a high speed and, a heavy game and make sure everybody's on our A game. And that's, one of the things we're trying to do this weekend.
Crustacean Nation has brought it all season long, but the team is going to need every ounce of energy they can get from the fans to take us all the way in the Commissioner's Cup playoffs. Coach, what is your call to action to the fans to bring them out in droves during playoff season?
Well, the fans, the players feed off the noise in the crowd. That you can hear it. You can hear it on the hits, obviously on the goals, and certainly any scraps and saves. So it's something that it's hard to explain, the feeling that you get when you're playing in a big crowd, and it just helps the adrenaline, and so it's your extra player, and we want to get as many fans out as we can.
Crustacean Nation, you've been behind this team all season long, and with playoff hockey right around the corner, we know the energy in Athens Ford Arena is only going to rise. For the fans out there watching and listening, now's the time. Lock in your seats, grab your gear, and get ready to bring the noise. Payoff tickets are on sale now. Let's pack the tank and make Athens the loudest barn in the Fed. Get your tickets at rocklobstershockey.com or at classiccenter.evenue.net.